spent your time playing a key rune. It is interesting that Alex is still leaning on 2 Garrett Primal Hunters. A lot of Jund players have begun cutting down on those, going to 1 or even 0. And the Pillar Flames, like you said, that's a throwback to Jund of about a month or 2 ago when people had begun main decking that card as a defense against Skur's deck High Priest.
Another noteworthy part of Alex's deck is 2 main deck copies of Thundermaw Hellkite, not often seen in the main decks of Jund.
Yeah, I think that's probably a concession to the mirror match. He wants to have additional durable threats capable of winning over a Thragtusk.
So both players starting off the game by playing lands and saying go. Third turn for Alex here. Again, unlikely to add much to the board, just a Dragon Skull Summit.
Not really where Brandon wants to be when he's on the draw, as the vast majority of Alex's removal comes online on 3 or 4 mana, and if he's just playing 1 threat into Alex's open mana, can be tricky. Domri, of course, can actually mitigate that issue, so that's what Brandon leads with.
Nice play on an empty board. He finds an Avacyn's Pilgrim off of his Domri. 4th land for Alex, and Huntmaster of the Fells added to the table. So pretty slow pacing so far. Normally this would really favor Jund, but Domri throws a little bit of a wrinkle into that analysis.
It does. I think that Domri is going to be one of the reasons Dreadboard continues to pick up in popularity, especially once sets rotate, and I think Domri gets even better. But right now, it's already basically threatening to kill that onboard Huntmaster of the Fells, assuming Brandon has a creature, which I think Alex, definitely expects. But what's he going to do? Not put his guy into play?
Yep. Domri usually implies creatures are in the deck, so
it is possible Brandon's got a whiffer here or something, right? I guess I see a couple of lands, another Domri, a Mizium Mortars. Is it possible he lacks a creature capable of fighting down Huntmaster of the Fells?
I think he has a Gorklan Rampager in his hand.
Well, that's not so bad. I'd be reasonably happy to play that. It's a little tough because you generally want to have Rampager in your hand for when you're trying to roll over a Thragtusk. But if he has to play it here, there are worse things.
I think the biggest concern is almost certainly Alex has a removal spell, and he doesn't want to use Domri, fight, and then have the Rampager get killed, and then the token take out Domri. He's probably trying to squeeze a little bit more out of.
If that's his concern, there's not really too much he can do other than maybe burn that Mizium Mortars on Huntmaster and boost the Domri, because he can only do so much.
Yeah, but he's going to go down this road here, and the Rampager fights and kills Huntmaster of the Fells. So we're going to see if Alex has any sort of removal spell here to take care of that Rampager.
Looks like he has a Sever the Bloodline, Rakdos Return, Thragtusk, and some lands.
A lot of tools.
Yeah, he's going to Sever and get it that way.
Yeah. Picks his spot now to get Domri out of play.
Bonfire of the Damned is his other card in hand. Rakdos Return, Bonfire of the Damned, Thragtusk, land for Alex. Typical Jund assortment of goodies.
Yep.
He's very likely to fire either the Thragtusk or the Rakdos Return next turn, depending on what Brandon does. If Brandon drops 2 creatures that are capable of being bonfired here, he would do that, but that's not really common for the Naya deck. And sure enough, that's definitely not creatures capable of being bonfired.
Brandon picks his spot here, is able to land a Thundermaw. Comes across for 5 and now knocks Alex down to 17. Alex has drawn a second copy of Rakdos Return.
The second one usually significantly less effective than the first.
Yes.
However, Alex does only need 1 more land to flashback Sever the Bloodline and take care of Thundermaw Hellkite, a fact Brandon is certainly aware of. So he's basically just holding on at this point, trying to get as much damage as he can before that happens.
So Brandon's going to have to discard here down to 1 card. Keep in mind he also has Gavney Township in his hand, so he has something of a mana sink here. But there's going to be a fair amount of pressure on Alex to find an answer to that Thundermaw. Yeah. 7th land takes care of it, a couple other some of the pinpoint removal in the deck, but he doesn't have a ton of time to find it.
If he does miss, he'll almost certainly just be firing the return again for a small number in order to clear out what Brandon has left, or he'll be playing the Thragtusk to buy some time. Either way, it's going to be a tough spot for Brandon, as he'll be fighting a reasonably uphill battle with Alex drawing live to a lot of cards to remove his primary threat.
So it looks like Brandon has a Domri in his hand he's contemplating keeping. He has a Mortars, a Pilgrim that we know about from an earlier turn.
I think keeping a Domri here sounds pretty attractive, and that's exactly what Brandon appears to have done. It looks like an Ooze, 2 Pilgrims, and a Mortars go to the graveyard.
So the Ooze was pretty tempting to keep there as well.
Yeah. Assuming that is an Ooze, I feel like I would have probably kept the Ooze. Just go ahead and dispense with that Sever the Bloodline.
I think it's so hard. It's so, against Jund, it's so challenging to attack on the ground that I think I like this line a little bit better.
It's true that you know the Thragtusk can gum things up, but when you're binning so many creatures already, you know you're going to be able to grow it big enough to get through a Thragtusk, I think. Loxodon Smiter. Well, that makes the second Rakdos return even less effective than it already was,
And Brandon's
which was
draw
not
step,
great.
Brandon's draw step for the turn was also a Loxodon Smiter, so
Oh wow!
that Rakdos return is quite poor.
In that case, I guess this was kind of a worse Dominator reveal than you might have hoped for, as you know you could have very easily snuck 1/4/4 into play, but it's very unlikely he gets to sneak 2 with Alex already knowing that there's a Loxodon Smiter up there.
So Alex fails to find a land for his Sever. So Thundermaw still uncontested for the time being.
And that means Alex is actually getting to the point where it's lethal pressure. Even if he plays the Thragtusk, there's only so many swings he can take.
Pillar of Flame in hand, Bonfire, Rakdos return, Thragtusk.
I think Alex may be considering like a Bonfire for 2+ Pillar to kill the Domri, or maybe just Pillar Wolf Attack kill the Domri and Rakdos return with his other mana. Probably Thragtusk.
I like casting the Thragtusk now that he knows.
Once this attack goes through, Selesnya Charm being like a reasonable fear, he's got to be pretty excited.
I like this turn. I like that play from Alex. Uses all of his mana, clears out the most threatening of the cards.
Doesn't put 2/4/4 elephants into play.
Another Domri the draw for Brandon.
He may have been balancing out whether a Rakdos return to clear out Brandon's 2 cards and the Domri at the same time was better than just casting his Thragtusk. Obviously, we know that would have been disastrous for him.
Thundermaw cross for 5. Lucky Alex back down to 12.
Looked like he may have drawn a Rampager there.
It was a Domri.
Oh, it was a Domri. It's interesting that he chooses to go with the Smiter this time when faced with the same decision before he went with the Domri. Obviously, the Thragtusk changing the math in that particular situation.
Yeah.
Perhaps this will actually bait Alex into Rakdos returning the other elephant out of his hand.
It is possible. He's moved the Rakdos return to the front of his hand.
It looks like he has a Putrefy, Bonfire of the Damned, Bonfire clearly not the card he's going to cast this turn, and Rakdos return. So yeah, he may just be considering that. Yep, Rakdos returning for 4.
So this is pretty exciting for Brandon. He gets to put the Smiter into play.
Alex probably not going to attack anymore, however. Well, maybe. I mean, if Brandon does trade, he'll still have a 3/3 and a 2/2 on defense against the 4/4, which will be able to trade it up.
Yeah.
But he decides no. Looks like he's going to try and just hold up the ground and find that land for Sever the Bloodline.
So Brandon now, that draw step would have to be really good for it to be more attractive than just using Gavany Township.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Brandon's going to attack. He has to get one of these elephants to trade with something, just because of the Sever the Bloodline. He can't afford to lose them both to Sever. Yep. And the Putrefy can take care of Thundermaw Hellkite, though Brandon's not aware of that, so he just wants to remove his vulnerability. Stomping Ground was definitely not better than Township. Alex on 6 life, draws.
Second Putrefy, excellent draw.
Yeah, that locks out a lot of Brandon's better threats off the top of the deck. And he's going to go ahead and use it just on the Smiter right there. That's totally fine as well.
And now Alex is in that classic good Jund spot of lands are good draws and spells are good draws.
Yeah. Brandon looking for Thundermaw Hellkite as his favorite card, probably. I don't think he has any outright winners other than Bonfire of the Damned, which he has 1 copy of, is in his deck.
Reckoner, a totally fine draw there.
Yep. Alex now forced to go to the top for land or removal spell. His Bonfire significantly less good. Thundermaw Hellkite. Well, now it's Brandon's turn to be on the clock.
Yep. Now Brandon's got some big draws here. He has Bonfire,
Goreclan
Rampager. Some huge draws.
Domri Raid would also do it, assuming Alex blocks or doesn't block here, depending on how things go down.
Still don't know the contents of Brandon's draw there.
Yeah, he's not letting anyone in. Yeah. He's 1 green short of being able to live if he drew Scavenging Ooze, which is probably unlikely. And
Looks like you said no blocks, and that was a concession.
We may never know the contents.
Alex had a lot of huge draws there, and he found one of them in Thundermaw Hellkite and was able to fade a couple of Brandon's lethal draws there and take the first game.
Yeah, that was definitely a tight game. Brandon, felt the burn on that first Rakdos return. It really, even though the cards he discarded weren't especially high impact, like those Pilgrims would have gotten swept up by that Bonfire if they'd ever entered play. And the seventh Bloodline never even came into play, so discarding Scavenging Ooze turned out to basically not matter.
So, to the sideboard, what does Brandon have in store for us?
Brandon's got some interesting numbers in the sideboard. He has a Sigarda, Host of Herons, which I imagine it's probably pretty good in this matchup. It's difficult to Bonfire, and it is immune to most of the spot removal. He's also got 2 Faith's Shield, which can make many of his creatures immune to Bonfire. If you're going to lean on Thundermaw Hellkites, it seems like something like Faith's Shield is exactly where you'd like to be, turning those into nigh unstoppable monsters. He also has a Singleton Assemble the Legion, which has long been considered a pretty reasonable card against Jund. And beyond that, he has some more interesting options, such as 2 Oblivion Rings. Not a big fan of those myself, because Jund typically plays Abrupt Decay, and they just get waxed by that. But, another Scavenging Ooze, 2 Faith Shield, Assemble the Legion, Sigarda seem like likely cards for him to bring in.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier when we had Brandon on camera about Assemble the Legion versus Jund, where you can imagine spots where it's very good if they're playing this removal and attrition-oriented game, but Jund can also play to the ground. Assemble the Legion isn't the fastest card in the world, and if Jund's clocking you with its various threats, it can be too slow to get the job done. And especially now that you know that Alex has made a Thundermaw Hellkite, that would make me way more adverse to bring in Assemble the Legion than I would be if it looked like I was playing against a fairly stock list of Jund.
Yeah, I think I like Assemble much more when I don't know my opponent has Thundermaw Hellkites. Those definitely change the math. As Alex has proven that he can actually race over those tokens. You can't rely on them for defense and then convert them into an offense the way you could against a list that's all in on Thragtusk. And to be totally fair, it's possible Assemble Legion is actually just poorly positioned now. What with Lifebane Zombie filling in a lot of those decks in the same slot, it can also attack through a Assemble Legion very effectively.
Yep. On the other side, Alex's sideboard, not a ton in the way of explicit anti-beatdown cards. You see most Jund sideboards that have access to additional Doomblades, additional Putrefies, additional Dreadboars for creature-oriented matchups. You really don't see any of that here. He has 2 copies of Liliana the Veil and 2 Pillar of Flames, which are okay against Brandon, but certainly not haymakers.
Ideal. Yeah.
He also has 1 copy of Partner in Blood, which is not terrible, but again, not at maximum efficiency, much more for Pan-Hexproof and similar decks. The rest of his sideboard seems much more devoted to other control matchups. He has 3 Slaughter Games and Underworld Connections, a Rakdos Return, a Ground Seal, another Garruk, a Vraska. These are not the best tools for what Brandon's bringing to the table, so, he's definitely slanted his build of Jund to fight more against Blue-White-Red, Esper, and Blue-White Control. Not a lot of great cards for Naya in the sideboard.
His build seems excellent in the mirror as well. I imagine he's a pretty heavy favorite, considering he has access to up to 3 Garruks and Vraska. Not to mention, he can even bring in a 3rd Rakdos' Return. And Slaughter Games is not unreasonable. Certainly Underworld Connections is also very good. So he's packing some heat.
Yeah.
He has a few answers to niche decks, such as the Golgari Charm and Curses That's Hold. Obviously, those are excellent against token strategies, which are sort of on the decline. But he definitely seems to have come prepared for decks that are going to be a little slower. And this Jund is already reasonably favored against Naya, so I think eschewing those kinds of matchups is fine.
Yeah.
I think I like the Jund side of the matchup. Thundermaw Hellkite versus Lifebane Zombie is kind of an interesting question, because I think they're both good in the matchup. Thundermaw Hellkite can kill Domri, Lifebane Zombie can threaten Domri while also, obviously providing card advantage. But either way, I think I like Jund's side.
And really, another important feature of Lifebane Zombie is when you don't have Farseek on turn 2, you often have nothing to do on turn 2 and nothing to do on turn 3. And it's hard to win games where your first play is Huntmaster on 4. I mean, he was able to do that game, but that's the exception rather than the rule.
Atypical.
Yeah, Lifebane Zombie gives you a way to fill in your curve when you don't have access to Farseek, which is something you've seen occasionally Jund go to cards like Vampire Nighthawk to try to hedge against that sort of situation. Lifebane Zombie can fulfill that role there as well.
Yep. It's definitely one of the vulnerabilities of Jund was how much different a deck it was when it had Farseek and when it didn't. Now I think it's just clearly, if not the best deck in the format, like one of the best 3. by no small margin.
Yeah.
And personally, I do think it's the best deck. It's very unlikely I'd PTQ with anything else right now, other than maybe something similar, such as the Black-Green deck that Jeff Hoagland did very well with. It has a lot of Jund-like elements, but it's not as vulnerable to the card Burning Earth. Burning Earth, interestingly, a card Brandon Nelson decided not to play in his sideboard, a decision I generally agree with. We saw Burning Earth in Andrew Tenjum's sideboard at the Invitational, and it actually just wasn't enough to cut through Jund. He took too much damage himself, he couldn't establish enough presence, and Burning Earth wound up just locking him out of the game.
No, I was very happy with exactly 2 copies in my mono-red sideboard. I think if I was playing a 3-color beatdown deck with all dual lands like Brandon Nelson's, I would want 0.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't regret not having the 3rd and 4th. 2 felt exactly how much I wanted. Because decks like Jund, they can play to the board too. It's not they're playing a purely reactive game. They have Huntmasters and Thragtusks that they can threaten you with, so you need to have a mixture of pressure, and then Burning Earth can be a nice cap to your curve. But thinking that you can board in 4 Burning Earths and ignore what's happening on the board, I think is a fallacy. Jund can play that sort of game.
Burning Earth is not a Slaughter Games, if that makes any kind of sense. Obviously Slaughter Games can actually lock a number of decks outside of the game. Sphinx's Revelation decks notoriously handicapped by losing all their copies of that card. But Jund can actually just be ahead before Burning Earth comes down, or take the lead once it's in play.
Brandon Nelson looking at his opening 7. It does have the Assembled Legion in it, so he's brought it in.
Alex threw down a smiley face for us. He doesn't appear to be smiling as he picks up his 7, though. Maybe we'll get to see this Assembled Legion in action, see if it works out for Brandon. Looks like Alex keeps, and Brandon with no 1-drop.
And Alex has brought in his Leon the Veils for a little bit additional picture removal.
Voice of Resurgence or Scavenging? Scavenging Ooze it is.
And there's a Farseek, the Marquee Jund opening.
Looks like an Assemble, an Arbor Elf. I think I might have seen a Smiter, and I know I saw a Selesnya Charm in Brand's hand. The Smiter, obviously, a rude surprise if Alex tries to +1 a Liliana, but that's not really what he's probably going to do the first go-around with Liliana. I imagine Brandon's very likely to just cast a Smiter this turn.
Scavenging Ooze comes across for 2.
The only real incentive to not casting the Smiter would be playing the Arbor Elf to try and set up a turn 4 Assemble. But I don't think Brandon even has a 4th land, so that would be ambitious.
Yes.
He also would need his 4th land to be a forest. Even more ambitious.
You see him, Alex, Miracle in his Overgrown Tomb taps and play Liliana of the Veil.
His hand is fire. It's another Liliana, Huntmaster, Olivia, and Thragtusk alongside a Bonfire.
Was that an Oblivion Ring for Brandon?
He did draw Oblivion Ring. His hand is Thundermaw Hellkite, Selesnya Charm, Arbor Elf, Assembled Legion, and the Oblivion Ring he just drew. And now he's got some decisions to make. Attacking Liliana, he knows that opens him up to another Liliana being played. Plus, he just misses out on 4 damage. But he decides to go for it. Alex missing a land, but with a number of powerful cards in his hand.
Olivia, Putrefy, Huntmaster, some of the classic Jund meat and potatoes in here.
Yeah. I think I like playing the Huntmaster here, with the Putrefy maybe being a close second. If Brandon's strapped on mana, as Alex can assume that he is, Putrefy and the Smiter will buy him a lot of time if Brandon continues to miss lands. The Arbor Elf, obviously no help to Brandon's mana predicament.
I think if you're in Alex's seat, you have to be worried about the implications of Thundermaw Hellkite, which may make him loath to do anything with that Putrefy until he absolutely has to. And you see him play Liliana, to me feels like a hedge against Thundermaw Hellkite. This way he gets to suppress the mana a little bit, and additionally, save his Putrefy for later in the game.
It does also buy him that same 4 life that he's spent the other one on, and just playing a 3-mana Edict is not the worst if you're genuinely concerned about that problem. And it looks like that decision paid off. Brandon would have Thundermawed him right in the mouth if he had let that happen.
So Huntmaster for Alex. Waiting for him to get his token there.
It'll be interesting to see what Brandon chooses to do this turn. We know he has a Selesnya Charm. If he draws a land, he'll be put to a decision as to whether he casts Thundermaw Hellkite, Assemble Legion, or attacks with his Selesnya Charm up. And he did draw a land, so I'm curious to see how he approaches the situation.
I would have to imagine the play is Assemble, because you just want to get that online as fast as possible. But I can see an argument for sticking Thundermaw when you have a window to definitely hit for 5, but it looks like Brandon's going to go with
Attack,
Assemble.
and then Assemble. I like that line. An amusing point of fact is that Alex, will have to flip his Huntmaster before the Assemble the Legion token is created, so Brandon, won't immediately lose his guy. Should Alex pass the turn to try and make a 4/4, but I'm not so sure that that's even in Alex's mind at this point. He probably wants to play spells if he has them.
Yep. Another Thragtusk off the top for Alex, and again, just choking on these expensive spells.
Yeah. He's got the ability to play an Olivia or hold open Putrefy and pass. Both options are pretty tempting. I believe he's clarifying this particular interaction. Will I be able to kill your guy with Huntmaster? And that will affect his line for sure. I'd be pretty tempted to play the Olivia and try to get to the sky, but
I personally prefer to hold up Putrefy just because you're so bottlenecked on mana that if you draw lands, you're almost certainly not using Olivia. You're going to be playing your Thragtusks in hand.
I agree with that. The issue is, Alex, I don't think that holding when you know a mana bottleneck is coming is that great, because we're going to have to cast the Putrefy eventually. Maybe it's reasonable to suspect Brandon doesn't have a Thundermaw since he played Assemble the Legion instead last turn. And this might be the only window where you have 4 mana available to play, even just a 3/3 flyer. Like, it's not impressive, but
sure,
you're behind on the board. You might as well get one more thing onto it.
I guess from where if I'm sitting in Alex's seat, I'm thinking, well, the worst case scenario is I get to Putrefy the Smiter. It's not like this gets burned off for no value.
Sure. Okay. If he attacks and you find yourself, if you think that's what you're going to do, in that case, I probably would have not attacked with my guys, though. I might have just held it because that way I can maybe incentivize the Gorklan Rampager and, get a 2-for-1.
So you see Oblivion Ring take care of the Olivia.
Alex finds a land, he hits it, and we're going to start seeing Thragtusks.
Yep. And is Alex going to be able to race through this Assemble the Legion that's coming?
He will be able to cast a Bonfire for 1 to clear it out and buy a little bit of time midway through here. However, that's usually the last time a Bonfire of the Damned does enough in my experience against Assemble the Legion. You get 1.
So it appears that Brandon is using a Celestia Charm to make a 2/2 token before blocks. I assume we're going to put this in front of the Huntmaster.
It appears pretty likely. Brandon knows Thundermaw Hellkite took him down last game. He's not interested in getting to that low life total again.
Yep. And playing the 5th land and then not playing the Thundermaw before combat is probably an indicator that he doesn't need to save his Celestia Charm for that. He can safely use it to block the Huntmaster.
Right. And the tokens continue to come.
In the event that I ever do get my own tokens, I do want them to be Boros Soldiers.
Boros Soldiers.
Yeah.
all right. Well, you got to keep chugging in onto those invitationals, perhaps.
I mean, I haven't won a match in like 2 years there, but sure. I understand what you're trying to say. 2 more tokens from the Assemble Legion.
It'll be interesting to see if Brandon tries to keep up the pressure here or not. I think leaving back 1 to block is probably fine, as he doesn't really want to take 5 damage for free. But throwing away 1 to get in 1, not the best either.
And he's also got to consider just getting in his spots when he can, because the threat of Bonfire is there too. Sitting back with 1/1 tokens is not a recipe. You may not necessarily get to block. So
yeah. Well, I imagine at least Thundermaw Hellkite enters the red zone. If I attack with any tokens, I think you send the Smiter as well, as they're free damage basically if he decides to block the Smiter. And Brandon comes to that same conclusion. Thragtusk trades with the Smiter, and Alex takes 7.
Falling to 9.
Brandon has that 1 token on defense, creating a stopgap. I think Alex really wants to wait until he really wanted to hit a 6th land here, so he could, maybe Bonfire for 1 to pull up a little pressure, get in some damage, and then Putrefy the Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yeah.
But instead, he's either going to have to Bonfire for 1, which is not great, Putrefy, which is okay, or cast Thragtusk, which is probably about as effective as the Putrefy. I think I would probably Thrag Tusk and hope to get the Bonfire plus Putrefy next turn.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he still needs to play the game in such a way. He's going to say go. I still think he needs to play the game in such a way to set up the maximum that he can from the Bonfire, which involves having enough pressure in play where he can kill in one shot if he Bonfires.
Right.
So I would have probably added Thrag Tusk to my board that turn.
Yeah, I agree. It would have kept Brandon in the spot where he's forced to hold back tokens so that his offense isn't even dealing as much damage as he wants. But now he swings all out, and he's threatening lethal next turn unless Alex kills him.
And that's going to shut the door on that, as you see in overloaded Mizium orders.
So now Alex is stuck in that spot where he timed the Bonfire a turn too late. It will not save him if he casts it. He can cast Thrag Tusk to buy a turn, it looks like. Maybe. It's going to 4. Yeah, it'll buy exactly a turn. He'll go to 1.
And Alex has just been a mana short on a couple of these turns of having.
Yep. 2 games where players are actually quite tight on mana.
See Alex play a Thrag Tusk and go to 9.
This buys him a single turn. If Brandon has another Selesnya Charm or a Gorklan Rampager or virtually any card with text, Alex will be on the receiving end of death.
Nothing, just a land to go along with the Abyss's program.
Yep. Now, Brandon can actually attack more conservatively here, since he'll have lethal next turn too. Nothing's changing.
And you can still send all of his guy and leave his Abyss's program back to block, if he's feeling so inclined.
I guess. I mean, I'm not sure what he can play around at this point. It's like a removal spell plus Golgari Charm would be like his worst case scenario, basically.
Curse of Death's Hold.
Curse of Death's Hold, also good. Yep. I guess Curse of Death's Hold beats a blocker and not a blocker, so might as well just dodge that one. There's the land. Yeah, he can Bonfire for 1 and then cast a Putrefy, but that's not going to do anything.
Yeah. See Alex trying to see if there's some way to get out from under this, but just is overwhelmed by the assemble.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even watching this game, I'm not sure how great the assemble actually was. It obviously, came to dominate this game, but it's very possible that if Alex had just made his 5th land, the assemble would have done nothing. Like the Thrag Tusk come down like 2 turns earlier, they start attacking. Brandon's blocking instead of attacking. It's really difficult to say what would have happened.
You see an attack for 1. Okay.
I was just like, all right, you got me.
Just 1 again as Lex while he could, which I respect a lot.
Yeah.
So game 3 here. Now, I'm curious to see if Alex goes into the sideboard and accesses either Golgari Charm or Curse of Death's Hold. To me, being on the play, and the fact that Curse of Death's Hold has some utility in the game, even if some of the Legion isn't drawn by Brandon. If he wanted to go to an answer card, that would be the one I would choose.
I think I might choose Vraska the Unseen instead.
Okay.
I think it's got a lot of the same merits to Curse of Death's Hold, with the exception that it can be more live. It's another answer to Thundermaw Hellkite, which is one of the trickier cards to beat in the matchup. So it's not a great spell. I'm actually, I've famously badmouthed Vraska on a number of occasions. I'm not a big fan, but I think it's a flexible enough card that he might want it, especially now that he's on the play. On the draw, I think it's definitely too slow to have enough of an impact. But here, after getting beat down by the enchantment, I might be tempted to bring it in. I definitely would not bring in the Golgari Charm. That's just too narrow, kills too few things. It's going to be very easy to just draw that card in a game where Brandon doesn't draw the assemble and you mulligan.
Right. So the question is, with both Vraska and with Curse of Death's Hold, are you worried about just having too many 5s in the deck?
I would definitely be boarding down on probably some Garriks if I made that line. I would lean on Rakdos' return functioning more as like a 5 or even a 6, depending on how the game plays out. With me on the play, I can kind of modulate that. Obviously, because of Thundermaw Hellkite, Alex has a pretty big top end compared to most Jund decks. He's a little high. I might even have wanted to run like 26 lands if I were Alex. Maybe play a 3rd Wolf Run or get a Mutavault in. I know Adam Prozac said Mutavault was excellent for him at the Invitational. I could see doing that.
Yeah, no, I do like the Jund lists that have more in the way of more mana and more mana sinks.
Yeah.
Because the deck very, very quickly gets to spots where Either lands or spells are excellent draws if you configure the deck the right way. Once you have Wolf Run and Rakdos Return, a couple other expensive things, Olivia kind of falls into this camp as well. When you have the right mixture of expensive stuff and mana, then you can get to spots where your top decks are just all insane because everything's live.
Yeah. I know that Adam Prozac, in his column this week on Star City Games, actually said he thinks the third Wolf Run will be industry standard in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
So that's a bold claim. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think there's merit to it for sure. And depending on how you configure your deck, especially depending on the presence of fives, this many fives in your list, pretty reasonable.
So could you see a build that's 26 or maybe even 27 lands that play something along the lines of 3 Wolf Runs and a Mutavault, where you just have a ton of action to do with your mana?
I could see something like that definitely happening. I'm a big fan of manlands. They're one of my favorite card types in Magic. I frequently draft cube decks that can only win with manlands.
And certainly decks like John historically have been the best homes for manlands.
Yeah.
Where you need a little bit of offense against control decks, you need a little bit of defense against creature decks, you want to play a lot of mana for your expensive stuff, but you also don't have card drawing, so flooding out is a risk. Manlands check off all these boxes of roles you need to fill in that slot, and John is in the market for all these things.
It is.
So it's to me, colorless mana is of course a huge opportunity cost to pay for your 3-color deck, and that might reduce the number of Mutavaults to get played, and it might even make the correct number 0. We're still kind of figuring that out, but John certainly is in the market for everything that manlands provide, and it's not unreasonable to try to configure your deck to maximize that card.
Not at all. Obviously, you know, we'd love Treetop Village, or at least everyone who likes John would love Treetop Village. Everyone who hates John would probably want to throw themselves off a bridge if Treetop Village was legal.
Yeah, like a Raging Ravine would be an automatic 4-up.
Very powerful, you know, some of the most potent manlands have been historically green, so I guess it is a little refreshing to see John, you know, having to reach for it.
Yeah.
Having to reach for it, you know. Everyone else has been out there with their fairy conclaves and their get to encampments, or, you know, forbidding Watchtower, God forbid. What's the other one? Spawning pool. Spawning pool, yeah.
Spawning pool was a critical feature of the Napster deck.
Critical strong, but yeah, it was a feature.
You needed a block.
Yeah, sure, okay.
It's a different time, man. You needed a block.
I remember these times. I was reading Scry, you know, in middle school.
Forbidden Watchtower, definitely the least prestigious of the resumes of any of those.
Sure, I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
Not sure what we were thinking when that one came together. Who could get excited about Forbidding Watchtower? That's perhaps its greatest sadness.
You see Brandon taking mulligan here.
Yep.
White players who play white often like to block. So Watchtower is pretty good at blocking.
I don't know.
It is the saddest of the lines. Also, you don't have to make when you have a cycle of cards, it's okay if some of them are superstars and some of them are stinky. That's an okay thing. You don't have to be.
That's fair.
They don't have to be 10 out of 10s.
Yeah, can't all be Slesny Charm. Some of us have to be Dimir Charm. Yeah.
Right. Even Dimir Charm has shown up in tournament decks.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Dimir Charm. I can't recall specifically it showing
very
up
low
in
in power.
a tournament deck and looking great.
I think Ben Lundquist played 1 copy in his Esper build. That's quite a. If there's any endorsement I'm looking for, it's Benny Beatdowns.
It's Benny Beatdowns getting Dimir Charm the stamp of approval.
Yep.
It's fair, I suppose.
Kill a Huntmaster and counter a Rakdos Return.
It can do those two things very specifically.
But there's control decks that are in the market for those two things.
Now that Scavenging Ooze is around, maybe it's a little better even. I don't know.
Alex leads off with a Blood Crypt, Sacred Foundry for Brandon, who really hasn't had any explosive mana creature openings. I really like Alex miracling in his Ravnica duels.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
Looks like his hand's a little land light. He only has 1 more land left, and he once again has a Bonfire of the Damned in the opener, but he's going to get to burn it this time. Or he's going to Liliana. The Liliana, a little bit of a better play, obviously. Gets to Edict away the Elf, sit on the Bonfire in the event that he sees, you know, something like a Huntmaster or something more threatening. Although, now it looks like he might have been punished. He'd probably wishes he'd sequence Bonfire and then Liliana now that he sees Boros Reckoner in play.
Alex, very dangerous to plus Liliana here, knowing that Locks On Smiter is possibly there.
I like your Moxie
He's
kid.
Go for it. I like it. Big fan.
Pitching Thundermaw Hellkite, it looks like he's considering. I would probably want to hang on to the Thundermaw. I would legitimately consider pitching at the Bonfire. I think we burned our opportunity for it.
Oh,
I was like, yes, it wasn't a smiter. Oh god, it wasn't a smiter.
He is. Oh, and Spider off the top for Brandon, and now Brandon needs to contemplate: do I leave the Liliana in play and let him plus it again? But
nah, he's gonna go ahead and
correctly assumes Alex will probably edict him.
Now, does he cast Gorkline Rampager or the Smiter? I think I just cast the Rampager, maybe. Alex has missed lands. Might as well just get in for the get your mana more efficient.
Well, it's definitely much more awesome for Brandon to have a Rampager left over if Alex draws a 4th land. As you see Brandon laugh, obviously the Smiter was a draw.
Yeah.
Alex has just drawn Golgari Charm, which is...
We talked about that during sideboarding.
Less than optimum efficiency right now.
Yeah, Golgari Charm, one of the weaker answers to Assemble the Legion, which Alex was, naturally very scared of after being defeated by it so soundly. But the problem is that when Brandon doesn't have his one Assemble the Legion, the Golgari Charm is not much of a card at all.
Gorkline Rampager added to Brandon's board. A Dreadbore off the top for Alex.
Well, he's fighting the tide here, but Dreadbore's a nice one. Yeah, I think we have to kill the Rampager.
Trying to get that 4th land, trying to get that one of those Huntmasters into play.
He has a Barter in Blood as well. That must have been his draw last turn.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not opposed to him citing in Barter in Blood.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
It's gonna fall to. It's as good as it's gonna get here.
Yeah, that was the most impressive Barter in Blood I've seen in a little while. But he's still under a lot of pressure. Obviously, dead to any Thunder Mahokai off the top of the deck.
But he's starting to turn the corner here. We're going to be starting to be able to cast our Huntmasters and some of our more potent cards.
I think we have to cast the Huntmaster to get above 5 life here.
And we also just need, in general, to be spending, when we're choked on mana, we need to be spending mana every turn. There's also a reasonable chance it flips because Brandon might just be out of action.
Yeah, it'll be curious if he attacks, does Alex trade or chump or take 4? I don't think he takes 4. That's a little bold. He's going to trade. I agree with trading.
Yep. Just give yourself the time to get the cards out. And there's a cigar.
Wow.
Huge draw.
Yeah, that's
huge draw for
that's going to be tough. Alex has very, very few cards capable of defeating a Sigarda. Bonfire for 4, once he draws a land and then a Bonfire is one of them. Dreadbore, that's not going to cut it.
Liliana doesn't do it. There's very narrow range of answers to this card.
A Thunder Mahokai on defense is actually one of his more reasonable plays right now.
Another Huntmaster added, taking Alex up to 8.
Sigarda clocks in. Brandon's one-ofs in his sideboard really doing some work. Obviously they just force Alex to present a varying range of answers, which is the kind of defensive posture you want to put Jund in. You want to put it so that they don't just draw a spell and it answers whatever you did.
Yep. One Sigarda, one Assemble Legion seems like a pretty good setup to me.
Yeah, I like that split. Those are 2 very different cards to make Alex answer. One of them requires very, very specific removal to get removed from play or neutralized, and the other one turns off most removal. Alex getting his licks in, playing an Olivia on defense. He's really hoping that Brandon will just brick a spell once, and that'll let him actually, maybe get in enough damage that he can race down the Sigarda if he draws a Thragtusk or something like that. But Brandon continues to draw a spell, and that's going to probably be enough to slow this down to a win.
The 4th removal spell in his hand.
And still dying to a creature.
Yep.
Yeah, that's Sigarda's showing her stuff.
He reveals
his hand, which is it.
These
cards are sweet, right?
There it is.
I think it was particularly telling the way Bonfire of the Dam wound up working out in that match. Alex had one in his hand in every game and could never cast it to do anything, really.
Brandon Nelson 2-1 with Naya. A couple really impressive post-board games for Brandon there where he looked like he was actually in some amount of trouble in both games, but a mixture of Assemble the Legion and Sigarda were just 2 entirely disparate threats require a much different class of answer, and both were excellent with the way that Alex's draw was. He was very one-for-one removal oriented and on the ground in the first game, and on the slower side, and Assemble was great there. And then a game where he had no end of spell removal in his hand. He even had an answer for Assemble Legion and Golgari Charm. The one of Sigarda was unanswerable.
Yeah, definitely.